What happens when your boss refuses to accept your resignation letter? The resignation letter I'd handed directly to my manager should have been the end of a chapter, but instead it became the beginning of the most surreal 2 weeks of my professional life. After our brief conversation about transition plans, I thought we were on the same page about my departure. I was wrong. Apparently my manager had decided that reality was optional, and my resignation could simply be ignored. Working in accounts payable for a small company wasn't exactly rocket science, but you'd think I was some irreplaceable genius based on my manager's reaction to losing me. She continued assigning me projects scheduled for the following month, booking me into meetings 3 weeks out, and acting like my departure was just a phase I'd eventually get over. When she asked me to order business cards with my name on them, I gently reminded her that I was leaving. "We'll see about that," she said dismissively, walking away like she'd just shut down a child's unreasonable request. The confidence in her voice suggested she genuinely believed she had veto power over my career decisions, as if employment was something that required mutual agreement rather than individual choice. I'd processed invoices using QuickBooks for 2 years, hardly specialized skills that couldn't be transferred to literally anyone else. The delusion reached peak absurdity when she scheduled me for a performance review the following month. When I pointed out that I wouldn't be there to attend, she looked genuinely confused and claimed I'd never mentioned anything about leaving. This wasn't selective memory or strategic manipulation. She seemed to have genuinely convinced herself that our resignation conversation had never occurred. Fortunately, I'd anticipated this exact scenario. Working in toxic environments teaches you to document everything, so I'd taken a photo of myself handing her the resignation letter and saved screenshots with metadata showing exact dates and times. Her pattern of denying conversations and rewriting history had made photography a necessary professional skill. The strangest part was her reasoning for why I couldn't leave. "You can't just abandon us during busy season," she'd say, as if seasonal workload fluctuations were permanent life sentences. "We invested so much in training you," she'd add, referring to the 2 days it had taken to show me their QuickBooks system 2 years earlier. The investment she was protecting amounted to maybe 16 hours of orientation time spread across my entire tenure. When I sent a follow-up email to HR with copies of my resignation letter and photographic evidence, the response revealed everything I needed to know about my manager's character. This wasn't her first attempt to trap departing employees in a web of denial and manipulation. She'd pulled the same stunt with someone else the previous year, apparently believing that refusing to acknowledge resignations would somehow make them invalid. HR's quick intervention and confirmation of my departure date validated what everyone except my manager had understood from the beginning, that employment relationships require consent from both parties, and withholding that consent doesn't create legal obligations for the other person. Their mention of handling it internally suggested this pattern of behavior was finally catching up with her. My manager's final acceptance of my resignation was delivered like she was granting me a royal pardon, as if my departure required her permission rather than simple notification. The performative graciousness couldn't hide the fact that she'd spent 2 weeks living in an alternate reality where employee retention was achieved through willful ignorance rather than competitive compensation and decent management. The experience taught me something valuable about certain types of workplace dysfunction. Some managers genuinely believe that their authority extends beyond professional responsibilities into personal life choices, treating employee departures as acts of betrayal that can be countered through sheer force of will. They mistake their own desperation for leverage, forgetting that adults can simply stop showing up regardless of whether their departure is accepted. Documentation had saved me from what could have been a messy situation involving claims that I'd abandoned my job without notice. The photo evidence and email timestamps created an undeniable record that protected me from potential retaliation or attempts to damage my professional reputation. In toxic workplaces, truth becomes a weapon that requires careful maintenance and strategic deployment. The new job I was starting represented more than just a career change. It was an escape from management that operated through psychological manipulation rather than professional competence. Working for people who acknowledged objective reality felt like a luxury I'd forgotten existed during my time under delusional leadership. Some employers treat resignation letters like relationship breakups, believing they can negotiate or refuse to accept the end of something that was never meant to be permanent. But employment is a business transaction, not a marriage, and either party can terminate the arrangement regardless of the other's preferences. My manager's denial hadn't changed my departure date by a single day. Starting fresh somewhere that actually operated in reality meant leaving behind the exhausting work of managing someone else's delusions about control and authority. Sometimes the best thing about quitting isn't the new opportunity, it's the relief of no longer having to pretend that unreasonable people are making reasonable demands on your time and sanity.